I just ripped them up and put them in a coffee cup and shoved them in the bin.
And the bonds were worth how much?
£1 million a bond. They used to carry around fortunes in briefcases. Billions of pounds, not millions, billions a day was walked around the city. And one of them got hit.
What happened that day was a courier left the Bank of England with a satchel over his shoulder. He'd only gone 2 minutes from the bank when he was robbed at knife point by a mugger. He grabbed the bag and went running off with it.
I had no idea of how it happened or where it was going to happen, but it happened. If a bond comes your way, yes, you can launder it if you've got the right contact. I can give you a bearer bond for £1 million. Nobody knows that you've got it. It isn't registered to you, it's registered at the bank. No name appears on it. It's just the same as a banknote. It says, we promise to pay the bearer. And the bearer can be anybody.
Keith Cheeseman had been given the call to come that night because there was something of interest to him. He kind of knew already what it was. It had been on the news all day. 4
of us were counting them. You know, when it broke, it was 292. There was way more than 292 million there.
What had actually been stolen was £427 million, 135 million more. Immediately, there was some suspicion as to who had loaded the satchel, who had put that money in there, and how come it was registered at 292 million when in fact it was 427 million.
I don't think anybody expected that amount of money.
Keith was given 5 bonds to see how they would sell. Normally, bonds in the criminal underworld are worth between 25 and 30%. He had a contact by the name of Blessing. He lived in Amsterdam and he passed bonds through the Amsterdam banks. Blessing had agreed to take 3 bonds, £3 million, and he was traveling in a black BMW when they realized the authorities must have been warned that bonds were going to be smuggled across the frontier.
2 black BMWs got pulled over in the queue going through Harwich. And I went, there's something wrong here. And he went, yeah, look. And they were dragging the people out of the car, searching the cars heavily. So I said, well, we've got to get rid of this. And so I just ripped them up and put them in a coffee cup and shoved them in the bin. But kept the numbers.
And the bonds were worth how much?
£1 million a bond. It had to be done. Because I thought, if we get caught with those, you're really in trouble.
So bonds went out to different places. They sent them to Pablo Escobar, disguised in Miami telephone books. And when they arrived, immediately they were discovered. So Escobar never got these bonds. So every time bonds now went out anywhere, it seemed that people were always caught. So it became very obvious along the line that there was an inside man. In spite of that, it's probably very much the criminal mind that once you're in, and you keep going. And so Keith contacted his friend, Mark Osborne, who he had traveled with across the United States, meeting Elvis Presley and so on.
He was a bond trader, although he'd been struck off.
He was always in debt. He was a gambler. He would lose $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 a day. So he was always desperate for money, owed money to the wrong people. They were given the opportunity to sell £20 million in bonds, of which they would get 25% of the amount they could get. And Keith was going to share that with Osborne, which is 12.5%. Osborne then had said he had contacts, but he didn't have the contacts at this time to get rid of bonds. And he went through various friends asking people, I've got some bonds, until he was given a name. And the name he was given was supposed to be a mafia don in New York who dealt in bonds. So Mark got a flight to New York with these bonds, not knowing that this man's name had been seeped into the underworld, and he was in fact not a mafia don, he was an FBI senior operative.
He should have been suspicious then. I would have been. They met in an Irish bar. The mafia would never meet anybody in an Irish bar. They have their own bars. So Mark was walked into a trap.
The FBI were able to find out more information. Where did you get these bonds from? And he said, thinking he was talking to the mafia, I got them from my friend Keith Cheeseman. So now Keith Cheeseman's name is known for the first time by the FBI. They say, you're going to be arrested. By giving us all this information, you will get a much smaller length of time in prison, and you should go back to Texas and sort out your own private business. And within a couple of days, he went missing, and when he was found in the boot of his car, which by coincidence had the registration plate ADIOS, adios. He was shot with 2 slugs in the head, assassination style. From there we go to Keith then being arrested because his name was the first name that went to the FBI. They put out an extradition order, and the British government would normally, under these circumstances, not allow him to be extradited to the United States. And the reason why they did so is because Keith Cheeseman was known, and was also known that in court he would tell the full story of the stolen bonds.
They came in to me, the American FBI and Bishopsgate Fraud Squad police, and it was like something out of Starsky and Hutch. I had a penthouse in the Barbican, and they came in. I expected the British police, but not the Americans. When they arrested me there, they took me into Bishopsgate, and they said, we're not going to charge you, because they hadn't got anything on me. I really hadn't, in a way, done anything. Yes, I was involved in having seen the bonds and could launder them, but I hadn't done anything. So the British police had nothing on me. And so they just said, we're sending you to America. I said, well, thanks very much. So I thought, oh, well, you know, this is getting worse. So I just skipped. I went down to Dymchurch in Kent, where I knew there was a caravan set aside, safe, until it became a newspaper called The Sun printed a load of information, so I had to move. I went to Paris first, stayed a few days there, and then on to Tenerife. I was compromised because what happened is damn telephone. I'd gone to watch Tenerife and Real Madrid play and got back. Suddenly the lift bell rang, and the guy came on and said, Keith. I said, you got the wrong fellow. He went, no. He said, go to your balcony and have a look over the top. And the penthouse had 13 balconies round it. And I went to the balconies, and every one, there was the Guardia Civil pointing guns up at me. I went back and I went, okay. I was extradited from Spain. So the FBI and the marshals came over to take me back to America. I arrived on a Friday, and I went into court in Manhattan on a Saturday. And I'd been put into with the mafia, and they said to me, don't worry about it, Keith, you're just going in, they'll tell you. And the judge was ranting at me, going, I can sentence you to 35 years, $1.5 billion fine. I said, oh, yeah.
Keith Cheeseman was in some ways the fall guy. He was extradited to the States, was sentenced to 6 years and spent 3.5 years. What happened in those 3.5 years, he was moved 20 times by Con Air to different jails all over America. And one of the reasons is they didn't want anyone talking to him.
I developed a close friendship with all the mafia leaders because I couldn't do them any damage because I was an Englishman in an American prison. And they looked after me. The head of the Colombo family bought me some New Balance sport shoes because mine were getting older, and he sent me a new, they were lovely guys to me. There's two funny stories about the mafia that I still laugh about. One is the questions they used to ask. They all think you know Princess Diana at the time, and I said no. And the other question was, what does the black rod do? And they have this television over there, and they're watching Parliament, English Parliament, and the black rod knocking on the door. And I said, he just bashes on the door, and it's tradition. And I don't know how many times I was asked that question.
Do you have any regrets?
Yeah, I shouldn't have done it, but I did, and I have to take the blame and the consequences for it. But of course, I hope I haven't sort of upset too many people. I haven't been the best of friends to some, but it was a lifestyle that was. You could write a book about it if you had a decent ghostwriter.